What if I told you I can teach you how to start a business within 5 minutes if you only... Now, this book in of itself is one of the best books that I actually read on business, and what I hope to provide you with this video is actually by summarizing the main ideas that you will learn within business. I hope to condense it within half an hour so you can get actually the most out of in everything that you need to know when you want to start a business and actually how to manage one. So I hope this will be more or less useful to you, and I hope you enjoy it. Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome you to another book review video, where in the last video we talked about the principles by Ray Dalio. Now in this video we talk about the Personal MBA by Josh Kaufmann. Now the main premise of this book is that you don't necessarily have to go to university in order to get good at business. So to start out of the point, usually when you think of business, we usually think of something really complicated. After all, you have a lot of things to manage and it's often really difficult to execute. And here's where you have to start out with the point. So what if I told you actually, no matter how small the business, be it either an Amazon or even a little market that you would find close to your home, what if I told you that every business can be broken down to 5 parts? 5 parts that not only will explain how every single business is organized, but how you can actually also start a business if you know how a business is structured. Let me guide you through each of these 5 parts so you can understand it. And the first part, which is also the most important part, is actually value. A business creates value. The reason why you spend money on something is because gives you some kind of value within your life that you're willing to spend on it. In fact, if you think about earning money, usually there has to be a person that spends the money so you can actually receive it. And this is actually a great problem that a lot of people make. They think about making money, but they think less about how to create value. In fact, value is that thing that generates money within your life. First question will be actually to figure out what kind of value you want to generate. And for that we will get also in a minute where we talk about different markets and different possibilities on how to decide what kind of value you want to generate. But the main point is this: you don't have to think like yourself, you have to think like the customer. The customer has to think that by spending money they will receive more value than they would lose by giving you the money. So this is the first part, and it's also one of the most important parts. The second part of every business is in fact marketing. Now I bet you've seen this example. You all of a sudden see a product go viral and everybody begins to talk about it. And you kind of don't know how it goes viral, but everybody seems to notice about it. And this is kind of thing. It's like, sure, you may create one of the best products that humanity has ever seen, but if the product doesn't get attention and nobody knows about the product, no one is going to buy it. No one would perceive it as valuable in order to invest in it. Sure, you may solve a problem, which we try to do when you create a business, but the reason that determines whether people come to buy it is actually the perceived value. When people actually see interest in what you're producing and actually know about it. And we will also get in a minute on how to do exactly this. Now the third step is actually to generate sales. Alright, so now you have a product that solves a problem and delivers some value, and you also got attention. But without even with those 2 steps, you cannot actually generate an income without creating sales. And sales are usually way more than just getting attention. It's actually bringing a person to pay for your product. Now this involves to a certain degree trust and also convincing the other person by offering a price they want to pay for it. Now the fourth step is actually the value delivery. And this is where you have to talk about customer satisfaction. Even if you create a very valuable project, you still have to make sure the customer is going to be satisfied with what you do. And the value delivery is actually making sure that the value is actually delivered, not in what you have created, but also for the customer. And the fifth part is actually the financing. No business can survive over the long run if it doesn't generate an income. Everybody needs money in order to survive, and this means also meeting our basic needs, from shelter to food and everything that we need to survive, up to actually finance the resources that we use in order to maintain a business. And so, aside from actually generating an income, which is the main goal of starting a business, aside from solving problems, you actually have to calculate your spendings and to make sure that you earn more than you spend in order so the business can survive over the long run, which I will explain to you in a minute. Now, Josh Kaufmann presents multiple ways on how to do market research and figure out what people find valuable. But before I come actually to explain to you all this various analysis that you can do, I actually want you to look at yourself. What are the things that you actually spend your money on? Well, probably it will be groceries, probably you pay rent, probably you are interested in the self-development, or you research for courses and to start your business, which is probably one of the reasons why you will be watching this video. The thing is just you are like other people, and it's very probable that if you already spent money on something, there's always somebody else who does the same thing as you. Now, as I said that there are multiple ways on figuring out what needs there are, one of the main ways that you can actually look for this is actually hierarchies of needs. And one of the most popular examples will be the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which goes from physical needs to safety, sustainability, to social connections, whether you will be able to connect with people, self-esteem issue, to think that you spend your time worthwhile, whether you are productive enough, and actually growth and development. There are also other more simplified versions. For the matter of this example, just knowing Maslow's hierarchy of needs would be actually pretty sustainable. Now, the way actually Josh Kaufmann presents is actually to 12 ways you could potentially generate value. Now, the first one is actually by creating a product. You create a product that solves a problem, and be it either a new car model or you create a new makeup product. You actually already have an object that you can duplicate that other people would find valuable. And this is where a lot of typical strategic business management comes in, where you already know what you have already generated and you can multiply it. And another form of where you can generate income is actually to service. And this is what you usually think when you have a job. You find a person for that you could work for, and this person would find the service that you produce for them is valuable enough so they pay you money. A third example would be actually a shared resources. So this could, for example, be real estate. You buy a home, and by letting another person use it, you actually generate income. You share things that actually could generate value. The fourth example would be subscriptions. A classical example would be actually Netflix or Spotify or any online service that you use on a daily basis that actually generates, for that you actually pay. Now, you don't have to pay usually for all subscriptions. For example, a newsletter could be a subscription. For that you don't actually pay, but by letting another person know about it and the content that you share with them could bring them into buying a product. So there's a direct way and there's an indirect way. Now, another thing that you would also know would be drop shipping or reselling. So you essentially buy a product and you try to sell it for another person for a higher price. Usually, one of the examples could be, for instance, gold or metals. You buy gold at a certain price so you can first protect yourself against inflation and actually stabilize your money, and so you can probably sell it 2 to 3 years later. This could be also the stock market, there's quite a variety in how assets tend to work, and so we shouldn't put all of them into one box. Another way how you could actually generate an income is through agency. Now, agency is essentially when you pay for a person so they can market a product so the product sells. And so you essentially help a business of business into that your income. So both of you come to profit. Now, another example would be actually renting. Renting is essentially a practice of lending. So if you, for example, buy a car and by having a product, you can lend it out for other people to use. This example, a car. Then another example would be also audience aggregation. And this is what you usually think when you think of a person who is an influencer. An influencer gathers a lot of attention, be it for the content they generate that a lot of people find valuable and like, but also because it offers a lot of opportunities, for example, for sponsors or for ad revenue, which is a classic example which you see right now on YouTube. I'm not trying to sell anything. Another example would be actually to buy options, and this is what Josh Kaufmann categorized under the stock market. You buy something right now so you can sell it later. What you essentially do when you buy options is that you're buying rights. You're buying rights over the property of a company. You're buying rights over something that you think will be more valuable in the long run than it is to hold the money right now. The 11th example would be actually insurance. Now you know what insurance is, so you pay a person money so they can make sure that if something bad happens, the insurance will take care of it so their life won't get destroyed by it. And the 12th example would be actually capital. Now, capital is essentially generating money by using money. And this could be investment overall, but usually a classic example would be also managing a hedge fund. You receive money so you can multiply it, invest the money in the way so that the customer would have more money in return for the service that you produce. But with all those many options, how can I decide on what kind of value you want to generate? And of course, one of the main parts that you can look for is actually to see what are the things that you're interested and passionate about to create. Not every option is viable for every person. But on the other hand, what you can actually also look for are problems. You know, every business tries to solve a problem. And as I told you in the beginning, you can already look at the markets that do already well. Every market does already generate all of the needs that are in demand. The question is there something that you can do better that no other market tends to do? Well, one of the examples would be actually DVDs and films. Back then, when there was no such thing as an online subscription and there was no such thing as internet, you can either go to a film or a cinema to watch a film, or you would actually have to buy a DVD or you have to rent it. Now, through these online services, as you for example would see with Netflix, they made it so much easier that the previous way of doing it became simply uncomfortable and unconventional. So this is actually what made them outperform all the previous markets. You have to find the edge, but you could do better that other businesses don't do. And which is of course difficult because you're at the very beginning in having to struggle with people who are already not only farther than you, but also have a lot of more opportunities than you. Now there's actually a quote within a book by Robert Stevens that goes like this: advertisement is the taxes you pay for being unremarkable. And one of the main points of advertisement is actually not to generate interest, but actually act upon an already present interest. Because you cannot force or manipulate people into wanting your product. You can already act on a need that is already present. The question is actually how to bring those people to feel resonant with the product that you try to bring forward. And one of the most common ways is that actually you already deliver value before you'd ask them to pay. And this could be a main example with free services. And now, I know, like one of the typical examples would be, for instance, Google Play. Now it takes up to years for producing or programming an entire app. And so it's not just simple generosity when people begin to offer you free services. Be it, for instance, in the market where they just offer you a free meal so you can get just the appetite to actually try the product. Free services is actually one of the main ways to create the connection before actually pushing your advertisement onto other people. Don't become this person who begins to either spam people or try to bring cows on them to actually force a product they're not interested in. In fact, if you would receive such a cow that forces you to buy something for that you have a need, you would actually find this person really annoying. And yeah. A similar thing you would, for example, also see with apps that are in the beginning really free, but then when you start using the app, you'll see one advertisement, one subscription offer, one subscription offer, before you could use the app. And so this is what actually makes a lot of free services stand out. Google is not something that forces you and pushes you to buy something immediately. It's you actually generate value at the very first beginning. And from this connection, they have a better selling opportunities than businesses that try to force on people and that actually turn them off before they even could try the product. This is one single aspect. The more amount of leads you have, the greater your selling opportunities are. If you want to increase the income that you generate in a business, you either increase the amount of sales you have or you increase the amount of customers you have. By increasing the amount of customers, you don't necessarily have to increase the sales. You could actually also even lower them and you would still generate more money because more people would want to use your product. Now that I told you how you could approach it so people would actually get interest by offering a free product, what do you do actually before the offer? Because before you can actually sell something, you need an emotional reaction from viewers. Now there was this actually example done with Pepsi in the 1980s or so. The idea was essentially that by running an ad over the Pepsi drink, they began to use the music from Michael Jackson in order to create this emotional connection to the artist with the drink itself. A lot of business and marketing comes from actually creating an emotional reaction that actually hooks people on the product. So it's not just only the argument that you bring and the offer that you sell people, it's actually how you make them feel, or be it from interest to safety that actually convinces other people to do so. This can be actually done through connection or by getting a quick reaction in a very few minutes or even seconds when you try to create an ad or product. First impression matters most, and the way you make them feel is actually what determines whether they even give you a chance to try your product. When it comes to sales, you actually have to decide on two parts. The first part is actually deciding on how you want to price the product, and the second part is actually how do you convince a customer to actually buy the product. Now there are multiple ways on how to calculate the price. The most simplest way is actually you calculate the costs of creating the product and plus you add the additional parts that you hope to generate through this income. The important part is not to overprice it. Now, usually the products that sell are often priced at a really cheap and people don't really care about the quality, or there are products that are the best of the best and they can allow themselves to demand a lot of money for it because they are the most leading products within the market. Now this depends usually also on what you try to sell, but if you go with the first strategy, it should actually work out pretty fine with most values that you hope to generate. But let's actually try to talk with the part on how to actually convince a person to sell or something. Now when a customer comes to approaches you that they are not satisfied with a price, what this should actually indicate is that the person is actually interested in your offer, but they are unsure about the price that it generates. And Well, Josh Kaufmann presents multiple approaches on how to change a person's mind, but one of the best approaches I found is actually through educational-based selling. You're not trying to only to convince a person into saying that it's the best product, but you actually also try to connect with the person. And one of the best ways to connect with the person is actually through interaction and to trust, and a similar way that you would connect a person with friends, someone you begin to talk about information that you find both interesting and relevant. And by using educational based selling, you not only generate value from the product that you try to bring forth, but also from the information that you try to share with the other person. And a quick and important factor that you have actually to consider is actual honesty. Sure, you may sell a product to be highly promising, and this could generate sales in the short term, but if you tend to betray your customers by selling something that you're actually not delivering on, this could actually damage your credibility, and this is not truly sustainable. So honesty and integrity is really important, and one of the best ways I found is actually by connecting to people with information and being authentic and honest with them. But even though that education approach may, for example, generate connection and confidence within the customer, the actual step would be actually to ask the customer what they're concerned about. If they're willing to communicate on the problem that they have of buying a product, this is actually parts where you can actually modify and think whether you can change it. Because most of the time when one person has a problem, there are also quite a lot of other people who would have a similar problem with buying the product. And so one of the ways that you can actually use this hesitation is not only to convince a person to buy it, but you can actually figure it out, so you can figure out what the other customer is hesitating about but is not unwilling to tell. So hesitation is a great prompt to improve a product and the service that you're creating. And this communication is not only sales-based, it's also product-based and value-based, and the entire business, in fact, depends on that. Now, start in the beginning. One of the main ways that you could do this actually by tracking your income and your spendings. You want to make sure that your income is always larger than your spendings, so you can ensure that your business will survive over the long run. But aside from calculating the incomes that you generate and the spendings, there are two things that you can actually do to improve your financing and to make sure that you generate more income. The first part that you actually can do is actually cut on unnecessary expenses. Now, the way this works is essentially you look over your incomes and you look over your spendings, and you try to look for ways on how you can reduce the spendings by actually producing the value. Now, as the rule goes, you don't work for money, you let money work for you. But in some cases, it's more effective to use money for it. And so by looking over all the spendings, you can just look for ways on how you can either do it yourself or how you can actually get rid of it. But this, of course, depends on what kind of business you come to do. Another aspect is actually to grow the business, so you duplicate it. And this means you either can hire people that will do the work for you, or you could either spend on your business so it will grow more. By growing the business, you may spend over the short term so that you would have more spendings to do, so the business would grow. But by the business growing, you also grow your income. And so by duplicating what you already have, you could actually multiply your income as long as you do it properly, but if the principles come to work out well for you. Essentially, this 5 parts is also what makes up every business. Now I'm just going to summarize it at the end, so you will not feel too confused about it. But if you have the need, you can look back and just review some parts of the business that you can actually get back upon. But the first part is actually the generation of value. The second part is marketing to get attention. The third part is actually the sales, so you can actually sell the product so you can generate an income. The fourth part is essentially consisting in make sure that the customer is satisfied. And the fifth part is actually calculating your finance so you treat your money in the most effective way that you can treat it. If you found this video useful, you can consider subscribing or even give me a recommendation what you think I should read next time, so you can actually get the most value out of a book, and perhaps I could save you some time with me summarizing the books that I'm summarizing. But without further to say, I hope you enjoyed the video and we see each other in another video.